Hello everybody, Tajri the God 3 here, and welcome back to, wow, I had to say welcome back to a series I haven't said welcome back to in like almost, what, 3 years? 4 years. Wow, feels weird. Anyway, welcome back to, or welcome to if you're new to this. Well, first of all, if you're new to my channel, hi, what's up, Tajri the God 3. Second, if you've been subscribed to my channel since like the very beginning, then you have run into these already, and it's time for me to do a new one. So welcome to Pokemon Anime Region Reviews, where I review the entire region anime wise and talk about how I feel about it and, you know, some of the pros and cons of each. I will be keeping it on this picture, so it's something that you can listen to, like, on, if you somehow can, like, hook up an aux cord to your phone and listen to it on your way to work. You know, listen to it while you're, you know, just chilling at home, or, you know, you don't have to, it doesn't have to be something you have to constantly watch. Will be strictly my voice, and it'll be my voice the whole time, and it's me voicing my opinions, and yeah, so have fun with that. Today, I will be talking about the Kalos region. I've already talked about Kanto, the Orange Islands, the Johto region, the Hoenn region, the Sinnoh region, and Unova region, and placed all of my thoughts on there. And after looking at this one in particular, there's certain opinions that I have that I think will be a bit more detailed than my other region reviews. Because back then when I started the region review, I did the region review based strictly off of my memory of watching each and every episode of that saga based on what happened during the time. So for example, I did all of the region reviews. I think I did them about almost daily. But it was all based off information that happened when Unova region was finally over. This time I'm actually doing the review of a region that I actually had the time to sit and make discussions and reviews and actually get in depth about, due to me reviewing the entire series of XY and XY&Z, where I've done tons of discussions with KG, John, and the rest, and this here is no exception. So those of y'all who know me strictly for my X, Y, and Z stuff, then a lot of the things that I'm going to say in this video are going to be basically very familiar to you all. But for some who are just tuning in to my channel, then you may be surprised at some of the things I think or say. Some of y'all who are already subscribed to me who watch this video may be into for some surprises too, because the series is now over, which means I can fully collect all of my thoughts and compile them together into what I think of this series as a whole. So let's start from the very beginning. Pokemon X and Y, Ash's journey to the Kalos region. Man, I gotta say, it's been good. It's like, overall, I gotta say it's good. How do I rank it? It's hard for me to actually rank it, just strictly because I think I have to put Pokemon X, Y, and Z in an area all its own. Now, that's not to say that it's ultimately better than the other series. It's just, I think Pokemon X, Y, and Z has an unfair advantage against the others. For a long amount of time, Pokemon has been doing several things visually that make it rather limited at times. There'll be times where Pokemon would end up repeating animations, but it'd be repeated animations in front of swooshy backgrounds and, you know, literally restocked footage of things that were used several time and time again in terms of animation. But this was the first series to actually use like a 3D camera and have stuff. So they still used stock animation, only this time they had different backgrounds each time. All of the battles looked like they were taking place in real time. The 3D camera lets you get the entire 360-degree vision of what was happening in the battles. Sometimes we got to see good use of Pokemon flying left and right and using their moves, and like, it was a spectacle. It was a really great spectacle, and a lot of the music that was used was a really great spectacle as well. Various themes from the video game were used effectively in this saga, and they were even songs used from other ones. Now, this is one of the sagas, much like the Unova region, where I didn't watch the dub. I watched a few episodes of the dub here and there with the others just to more or less make fun of it, but this was the one time I actually watched it all the way through in just Japanese, and there was times where I didn't even wait for the subs. I would just watch the episodes in the raw form. So I definitely gotta say this was the most immersive I've ever been in Pokemon in terms of anime wise. Not just because it was a job as a review, but it was mostly because it appeared that things were making a major change here, and this is a change that I think can only actually be compared to Sun and Moon when it comes out, only because now I'm in more of a position to compare them. Now, is that a cop-out for me not placing it in first or last? Yes and no, because honestly, I gotta say I really did like this series, but I think there's some things holding it back, obviously. So let's go into some of the cons first to get them out of the way, and then I can praise it later. For those of you all who haven't seen any episodes of Pokemon X, Y, and Z, well, first of all, what are you doing here? You should go check out my playlist, both of them. I'll put them in the link, and I'll also probably put up some annotations of both the XY series and the XYZ series. And if you want to get further in depth and have opinions of your own, obviously, you'll watch all of the 93 episodes of XY and the 48 episodes of Pokemon X, Y, and Z to get even more in depth as to what I'm talking about specifically in this video. So go check those out if you haven't already. If you have, then buckle up, because it's going to be one hell of a ride. Pokemon X, Y, and Z does have cons, regardless of what people, I think one of my friends, TSS, dubbed it the Kalos Kool-Aid. And I think mostly because it's new, and I think in terms of social media, Pokemon X, Y, and Z has had the most social media attention. I say that mostly due to the fact that not only did KG and I review this series around the same time when it first came out, we also wound up meeting up with several other reviewers. Now, what does that have to do with the series itself? Not much looking out of the surface, but it definitely does build up for some hyped up moments. Moments that were normally just viewed as things that happened already in Pokemon Advanced Generations or the Sinnoh League, or things like that. Things that have already happened in those leagues definitely got a lot more attention due to the attention that we, the viewers and fans, were giving it, due to us having more access to the internet and social media. You gotta remember, around the time that the OG series, or the Kanto Region series, or the Gotta Catch 'Em All series came out, and the Johto region, and then as well as the Hoenn region and the Sinnoh region, around the time that those came out, the internet wasn't really as immersive as it is now. There weren't as many videos on YouTube. Videos weren't getting as many views on YouTube. Things weren't streaming across online, and various episodes weren't being shown the minute that they showed up on the website. Like there was less momentum back then. Now, what does that have to do with the cons? Well, that points out one of the biggest cons of the Pokemon X, Y, Z as a whole in terms of a series. The internet sort of is its crutch. This may sound weird to a lot of people, but let me get into perspective of what I mean. There's a lot of moments in this series that the fans themselves, although you guys are great, we have essentially hyped up due to all of us being in the Pokemon community in order to praise these things or hype them up to an extreme. For example, the moment with Ash and Serena during episode 59, I want to say, between them having their quote-unquote first date, definitely showed to be a moment that the fans brought up more than the demographic audience that this was targeted towards in the first place. If this was titled differently, it would have just been viewed as a filler episode, or not even a filler episode, but like a padding episode to lead up to Serena's contest. It just got a lot more attention when the fans themselves were more anticipating of this subject, and the reviewers like John, KG, TSS, me, Dean, all of us hyped it up, giving it further expectations. I actually took the time to look back at a couple of episodes and realized that some of these episodes weren't as good as we essentially thought they were, and it's more or less it's bright, shiny, and new, making it the best rather than it being just simply a good episode. There's definitely forgettable episodes like the Phantom episode, the Meowstic episode, the Wigglytuff episode, the Litleo Pyroar episode. Yeah, a lot of these episodes take place to be very forgettable in some cases, but at the same time, there were some moments in those episodes that we as the fans have hyped up to make a lot better. Now, this brings up another con to the series until we actually get in depth into the series as to why it has cons too. One of the cons that was also brought into this was because of the fact that it was bright, shiny, and new. I always view Pokemon X, Y, and Z as having an unfair advantage above all of the other series just strictly because it had more to play with. This was Pokemon's first time having a 360-degree camera, having a better art style. The art style looks better no matter how many ways you want to put it. The characters are drawn a lot sleeker. The characters have more detail on them. Even during their worst days, they debatably look better than some of the stuff that we've seen in Unova. Yeah, there's some screenshots of them looking awkward, but overall, around the board, Pokemon X, Y, and Z just had more technology to play with, which gives them the unfair advantage. If you are a little bit confused by what I'm talking about, ask yourself this question right now. Do you think that Pokemon X, Y, and Z would be as good as the other series, or would be much better than the other series, if it was drawn in the same art style that, say, the Diamond and Pearl or even the Unova region was drawn in? And then ask yourself this: do you think, how would you view all of the other series? Like, take the OG series, for example. What if they remade the OG series right now? The original series, the Gotta Catch 'Em All series. What if they remade it, but used Pokemon X, Y, and Z's art style? Doesn't it sort of change the perspective of it all? It's like Pokemon X, Y, and Z doesn't have an art style to match it. And unfortunately, it's just a better art style. So it gives it a league all its own. And with Sun and Moon, they're changing the art style again. So again, there's nothing to really compare X, Y, and Z to in terms of art style because it has its own art style. It's a really well done art style, but it's an art style all its own. So it's kind of unfair to compare it to the others in terms of just graphical prowess because it was made later. Of course it's going to look better. But that being said, here goes another con, and this actually goes into the series. Not as much comedy. Now, a lot of y'all are probably confused as to what this means. In Diamond and Pearl, things got a little stale. The Advanced Generation did a good job with comedy up until, towards the end of Battle Frontier. Then we got to Diamond and Pearl, where a lot of things were just serious business. Everything was serious. We would run into comedic moments here and there, but they were more or less viewed as slight chuckle moments rather than just outright laughing moments. Things would happen like Dawn's hair frizzing up around Pachirisu, or maybe Ash comedically going into slapstick, or things like that. It was nothing that really let you take in the comedy and just laugh like in the original series, which is known for its comedy. Pokemon, the Kanto region and Johto regions were very funny regions. And I feel that this series tried to balance that out a few times, but there were a lot of times where a lot of the comedy was just pushed on one character, Clement. It seemed to me like in terms of roles, a lot of these characters were very stagnant except for Bonnie. Ash was the shonen main character who was the kick-ass battler. Serena was the girl who admired the main character who was also inspiring to grow her own character. Clement was the comic relief. It seemed that in a lot of episodes, the entire series would just sort of lean over to Clement in terms of when it needed a laugh, and that's who contained all the laughs. I remember there's an episode that KG and I both reviewed where literally they're in the town where Ash has to fight Ramos, and literally Clement ends up getting all of the slapstick. Beating up Clement isn't the only thing that you can do in order to make for a very funny series. And I think Insane Game Freak, someone I've partnered up with once before, actually quoted this as well. Even Clement's Pokemon seem like they're meant for nothing but comedy, with the exception of Luxray. It seemed that Chespin was the poor man's Oshawott of the Unova region. Everything that Chespin was doing was something Oshawott sort of already did, minus the food gag, which was already Munchlax's gag from Advanced Generations, so it felt like a weird hybrid of the two Pokemon all wrapped into one Pokemon, if that makes any sense. So in terms of it, a lot of the characters were stagnant. I say Bonnie was the exception because Bonnie was actually one of the pros of this series and was a character done right. Bonnie was very three-dimensional in terms of her character. We had sad moments with Bonnie, we had funny moments with Bonnie, we had serious moments with Bonnie, and we had angry moments with Bonnie. Like, she overall had a really great, well-rounded character out of all of them. I hate to say this, even though Ash has gotten a bit more better in terms of battling, it seemed that his mindset was only on battling for real. Not much really stood out about Ash in this series other than the fact that he likes to battle. If there was a battle that needed to be done, he did the battling. He was the battler. A prime example of this is when Serena had to cosplay as Ash. When Team Rocket attacked, who did they need in order to defend them? Ash Ketchum. They couldn't last one episode of him just being sick the whole day with the other characters taking care of Team Rocket. Clement's a gym leader, for Christ's sakes. How come he couldn't take Team Rocket? And this was after he got Luxray, so we know he's more than capable of doing it. Serena had breaks in and Sylveon too, so there's no reason why they should have been able to pull this off. There was no reason why they couldn't take out Team Rocket themselves. They needed to rely on Ash? Seriously? Even the Rocker Kid seemed pretty tough. So yeah, it just showed that each of their roles were very stagnant. Now, this also moves into the side series known as the Mega Evolution arc, which is a little bit of one of the pros of this series, which I'll get into later. But long story short, it seemed like this pattern was continuous even with the Mega Evolution saga. I would say Manon was a lot like Bonnie, but then again, the problem was we didn't see Manon for a large amount of time in the series. She only really made an appearance in the first 3 Mega Evolution acts, but we didn't get much out of her after that. She made a slight appearance in the 4th one, but it was a sad moment between her. So between happy and sad, there wasn't really much we can get out of Manon. Alon had a stick up his ass, let's put it that way. Alon was very much like the Yusei Fudo of this series, only there wasn't really much to get inside of him. Every time you saw him, you knew that the series was going to mean serious business. You could even tell by the clothes that he's wearing. I know it's a weird aesthetic subject to cover, but look at his clothes. They're dark, black, blue, purple, and, you know, just very dingy colors. Colors that usually mean for a rather gloomy character, which he kind of was in a sense. Ash's colors are blue and dark too, but they were also bright blue, vibrant blue, and red hat, along with his yellow iconic Pikachu, which is always with them. So the primary colors, blue, red, and yellow, were meant to bring out a life in that character. So when you compare the two, you get that feeling. Even with Bonnie aesthetically, her hair is like a yellow color and her skin's a pale color to complement it, with Daytona being an orange complement. It showed off a more vibrant character. So when you put all of that into perspective, I think one of the major cons that this series had was that it had a format and it stuck too much to it and wasn't afraid to get out of it. There were some funny moments between each of the characters and we had moments between them, but I think the most in-depth that we've ever got into Ash was during the Greninja stuff, which was towards the end of the series. But with all of that out of the way, a lot of the filler episodes, when they were done, were filler episodes that seemed like other filler episodes that happened. But then again, that's what you get when you have a series that's 900 something episodes old. But aside from that, I don't think there's any more cons that we could say that I had. Those were the biggest cons that I saw when watching the series, was that when an episode felt familiar or felt like it was in line, it felt in line. Now to move on with the pros. The pros was this series was not afraid to step out of line sometimes. Having Ash be very competent, him being in second place, whether we're mad or not about it, is still an accomplishment within Ash's career as a Pokemon trainer. Like, having Ash's battle skills be well known here, whereas in Diamond and Pearl he was strong, but he wasn't this powerful, to the point where he was basically defeating really high level trainers and even fighting on par with them in terms of the gym leaders during the final few episodes of the series. This series definitely shows that Ash is capable, even when given a certain type of Pokemon. It was clear that flying types were his primary Pokemon, with Greninja and Pikachu being on the sides, and then Goodra being an occasional borrow. But it was clear that he was stuck with a certain team that we weren't quite used to, and still somehow found a way to make it work. This definitely shows him as a trainer, but taking away from Ash for a second, we've also got Serena. Serena is a character that was rocky. At first, her character development took a really slow pace, to the point where even the series goes to point it out. And I guess that's one of the downsides as well too, is that Serena, her character was brought up to be a character that was very memorable. Unfortunately, there was nothing to go off of it. Having a character that knew Ash prior to the entire series is a good element on paper, but if you don't do anything with it, it sort of falls flat. And that's where Serena had most of her weaknesses at the beginning of the series. But at least the series has the decency to point out this weakness, with having Serena during the summer camp realize that she wasn't going anywhere with her traveling with Ash, which led on to the contest. Now, I guess this could be a pro and a con, but we're focusing on one character right now, so I might as well view it. Serena's contests were a pro in the sense that she actually found a meaning for herself and even went through a character arc. The Serena that you see now is literally a different Serena than from the start of the series. Cut hair, changed character design. I gotta say, in terms of which character definitely went through the most change, it has to be Serena, just strictly due to the fact that her appearance even changes. Now, I honestly gotta say, a long time ago, I said that Serena was my favorite female character, beating May. But looking back on this several times, the more I look at it, the more May starts to keep coming up. Only because I have to remember, May started off not liking Pokemon at all, and she went from that to being one of the top coordinators of both the Hoenn and the Kanto region. That's a pretty big feat when you look at it. I guess if you were to remake the entire series over again and have May go through the same thing, there's some aesthetics that I think that would have been done to make May be on par with Serena in terms of character. Because Serena started off her goal losing, much like May did. However, I think one of the things that boosted her was the drama and the theatrical standpoint of it. Her crying scene at the harbor aesthetically looks better than any depression arc that any of the other female characters have gone through, respectively. Just simply because things were used better. AZ's theme was used. She cried. Art style-wise, it looks better, which again goes into that whole XYZ has an unfair advantage turn point. Then we move on and she finally gets over and starts winning, but then she ends up winning at almost a breakneck pace, to the point where her character gets zoomed over so quickly, not much is gained out of it in terms of development except for the Pancham, the Sylveon, and the Braixen, strictly due to the fact that she caught all these Pokemon she got all these Pokemon and evolutions really fast. Like, really fast. To the point where you almost didn't know what happened, because she got them so fast. So overall, it was a rocky road, but in the end, Serena did definitely make herself known out of all the female characters. And for a lot of y'all who are wondering what I mean by in the end, I mean in the end, she definitely placed her mark in the series. Let's move on to Clement, because Clement's really fast. Clement, not much, I gotta say, and I definitely gotta say, out of all the male traveling companions that's been with Ash, I think he's the weakest. Yeah, Clement had his moments. He's even had episodes based off of him, but Clement, in terms of a character, seemed a little irrelevant most of the time until you got to his running gag, which that was what Brock was for. Brock's running gag was that he flirted with all the beautiful women and he would cook. Those were his two noticeable traits, to which Silent definitely shows to be more expressive. Like, Silence still wins the prize for being the most characteristic of the male traveling companions. And if you want proof, they brought him back in XY for an episode with Clement and Bonnie, just to prove my point. Clement was the weakest. Like, his whole goal was to be a stronger gym leader, which I had no problem with, but it only got fleshed out around the time that Ash was about to get his 5th badge. After that, after getting Luxray and training on his own and then fighting Ash, after Ash got the badge, guess where Clement wound up? Right in the back seat again. He helped occasionally, but he has a Luxray, for Christ's sakes, and the most, and you can all put it in the comments, what is the move that Luxray used the most in the series? Swift. You have a Luxray with electric terrain and wild charge, and his only move that he used was Swift. That's a problem. It's like Brock with his Onyx. That's a problem. So, yeah. Then we got Bonnie. Bonnie, she was definitely XY&Z's answer to Max. Because Max is a kid character, and when Bonnie came up to the series as a kid character, I almost facepalmed, but I gave her a chance, and she did not disappoint. Bonnie holding Poonie-chan, and Poonie-chan being the main, or Squishy if you watch the English dub, Squishy or Poonie-chan being Zygarde, being the main focus of the entire second half of XY, to the point where she became a main character that was the end-all be-all for whether or not things would work out. Her holding such a large pivotal role in the series, her having such importance, and then already working on her character before XY&Z via the Tyrantrum episode, the Flabebe episode, things like that. She has a powerful character. Her character did a good job of doing what it was supposed to do. Be a kid, but be a kid that was involved. And Bonnie definitely showed to be involved. Bonnie is definitely an example of how you can make a character who doesn't even have a clear goal, but make her the most likable in the series. And I believe that Bonnie did it. Like, she accomplished that goal. Bonnie was the only one to step out of her comfort zone in terms of characters in this entire series, because Bonnie wound up doing things differently, although there is one episode where they took her character a step backwards. But ignoring that episode aside, she definitely stepped outside the range of her box, and it paid off. So yeah, there's some very expressive characters. And another pro that this series has is that it's not afraid to show off and recreate and reoccur a lot of the characters. A lot of characters that we thought were filler or just background characters ended up making a comeback several times, and they definitely weren't afraid of giving gym leaders character development. What I mean by this is that even Karina, the gym leader that was focused on slightly in the video games, was focused on a lot in the series. She was very much focused on. Diantha is probably one of the least developed champions in the video games, but in the series she was brought back several times to play such an important role. And don't even get me started on the final battle. The final battle, I want all of y'all to watch it for yourselves, but the final battle was a prime example of what Pokemon, not just this series, but what Pokemon can do at its prime. And I definitely gotta say, the villain was even done well to an extent to where Lysander was a villain that definitely shown to be a good guy all the way through until it was time for him to, become a bad guy. To which case, it was sort of sudden, but at the exact same time, the Mega Evolution acts were sort of leading to it. And a lot of y'all are probably wondering, Tyrone, speaking of which, you didn't even review a lot of the Mega Evolution arc. I will tackle the Mega Evolution stuff at some point, but it was basically a side series, and that's another pro to this. This series had no problem actually having a side series to go along with this series to tie the two together, and story-wise, I think that is the best move it's ever made. Now, towards the end, and this is where the final cons, towards the end we do get a little bit of a rocky standpoint with some of the choices that they made, specifically because Sun and Moon's happening, but that's not necessarily the series' fault. Ultimately, that's more or less Sun and Moon's fault. But yeah, like, there were some bad written episodes, like the most infamous one being Greninja having the lead. But yeah, other than that, this series has been really good. This whole region has been a good region. So yeah, in terms of grading, I'd have to give this region I'd give it a high B. So with that said, next time you see me, or next time we come together, alola everybody, because sun and moon. See y'all then. Tyron the God 3 out.